Welcome to episode 132 of the Necronama.com. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and at the rate I've been screwing things up, I hope I have a stunt double.
All right, and I am Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of this podcast, and all I got to say is just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Swimming. Just keep swimming.
Nice. All right, our guest this week is Jason Ginsburg. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So why don't you tell our listeners a bit about yourself?
Well, I first of all am a lifelong fan of the classic Universal monsters, and from my childhood to today, I was a tour guide at Universal Studios and gave not just the regular tram tour that probably everyone knows about on the giant 4-car thing, but also VIP tours where we get a chance to get off this little vehicle and go inside the sound stages and the prop department and the sound department and walk around the set. So I've actually walked along the streets of Little Europe, as we call it, where so many of the exteriors of the Universal films were shot. Not so much this one. This was shot more in the lake area, as a matter of fact. But I was there many years. It was always a thrill to walk around those sets and to take guests there and give them the stories about it. I've written a bunch of articles about the Universal monsters, for which I interviewed film historians and horror authors and even fans to see why do young fans today, why does a 20-year-old have a tattoo of a 90-year-old movie or 90-year-old movie character? How is it still relevant? So I've been sort of investigating that in various articles. So that's pretty much my CV. I'm also a writer of articles. I'm a screenwriter as well. I have one screenplay that has been produced so far with a horror legend in it, I would say, Jeffrey Combs, that many people know from some horror films. I know mostly from Star Trek, since I'm not so much a fan of the more recent horror films, and I'm a bit of a chicken in that regard, but the classic ones all the way.
Oh, that's really cool. I knew a lot of that, but not all of it, and I definitely want to check out these ones with the fans. Like that always fascinates me. Like, it's one thing to get to talk to legends or get to talk to the directors or whatever. Like, there's this weird communal bond of film in general, and just how that makes bonds between people and how different things mean so much to each person, and none of it's the same. So it's always just really fascinating to me to hear that stuff. So I'm definitely going to seek those out. But go ahead.
I agree. I think of it, I have a degree in theater and film from USC, and I'm a big fan of Shakespeare. And when we think about the Shakespeare canon, which is 36 or 37 films, depending on how you define it. And that's about the same number if you throw in all the sequels and all the various kinds of film of the Universal monsters. And I see a lot of parallels. Some of the films in Shakespeare connect. All the Henry, the eight films of the Henry tetralogy, for example, are all connected. You can connect Antony Cleopatra and Julius Caesar, obviously. But some of the films in the Universal canon obviously connect. Some are standalones, like this one, and some Wolfman and Frankenstein enter each other's movies. So I think of it very much the same way. I hope that I don't mean to denigrate Shakespeare. I mean to elevate the monsters when I say this. That they are, people think of those films as a canon and sort of find a place in there and enjoy going back to that world, that sort of shared world of those characters, and not just the monsters, but also the heroes. I think, and the leading ladies and the fun and the weirdos like Dr. Pretorius, who's sort of hero and villain in a way. So I'm a big fan of seeing them as a sort of unite a whole universe, which Universal then tried to recreate. Obviously with mixed results today.
Man, you mentioned the Doctor, and in one of your articles, you put that you'd love to see a movie of his little people that, I don't know if they have a proper name, but man, that instantly got my head spinning. I was like, what a weird, amazing film that could be. and that's just like one line from your article. And I was just like, when you can take something that small and like send me down this rabbit hole of the things you could do with that, like that speaks volumes about this entire universe, Isn't
that a bizarre scene? And they never come back. He's like, oh yeah, I made life, but it's small. And I made, these 8 characters, a king and a queen and a devil and a ballerina, but let's make the monster a what? Wait a minute. I mean, even Dr. Henry himself is sort of just skims over that to go, well, let's think about the large scale monster. You've made 8 little people. What are they? When you take them out of the jar, what happens? Do they eat? Are they alive? Do they talk? And it never is mentioned again.
Such a strange throwaway. And it seems so normal to everybody else. They're like bored by it. You know?
Hey, Henry doesn't care.
I mean,
yeah.
This could have been like the Avengers. You could have had 20 more movies or 30 more movies just based off of them. And then them going into each other's stories as far as the regular Universal monsters.
I totally agree.
Being me, you know, I instantly pictured Dr. Evil talking about mini-me, like 1/8 my size, you know? Like, I was like, let's make a whole bunch of little Draculas and they can go attack everybody. You know?
Well, wouldn't that even be more terrifying? I mean, you've got Frankenstein's monster, you've got the Wolfman, you've got the Mummy, you've got Dracula, right? But if you had any of those at a smaller scale, it's like Chucky. You know, the great thing about Chucky is the surprise factor, and you don't see him approaching in the same way you would see somebody like Frankenstein's monster, or even somebody like Michael Myers, where you may see him from a distance and they happen to come up upon you or you run into them. Whereas with somebody like Chucky, because their size, or Annabelle, you don't know where the hell they are because of all the places they can get into.
I will say
somebody needs to make that movie.
A whole group of tiny Phantom of the Operas isn't sawing through that chandelier, though, because he could barely do it himself, so they're not making it through. But let me ask you, so you gave all these tours, you've done it repeatedly, whether it's Universal Monsters or not, like, do you have a favorite spot? Like if you had to pick one thing on the lots that like means the most to you, what is it?
This is a popular choice, so I'm not unique in this, but Courthouse Square, which was the home best known for the Back to the Future films, obviously, but it is it's still being used today. I mean, it's still being used in commercials and TV shows. Yeah, it's just so so much of the film takes place there, and the fact that it does change its look is integral to the whole trilogy. So, although the third one, the Western version, is not that was built out in the desert somewhere. So you still have through 3 different eras, including an alternate 1985. And so that's just a masterpiece of set design and the attention to detail. So taking people there, everyone knows it. We have video screens on the trams. We can pause. I can show them on video and pause the video and point out things. It's all right there. Nothing has changed. I mean, a few things in the ability to change, as you know, we're talking about going on 40 years now. But that is so cool to be there when so much of the films take place out in that area, and everyone knows it. Transcends language and age and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, Back to the Future is to me what Star Wars is to most people at comic conventions I attend. Like Back to the Future is like sacred to me, so that's definitely mine. Yeah, I've never actually gone on the tour, but that's the thing I need to go to. You know, like everything else, I'm like, wow, that'd be really cool. But that's like, if I don't get there before I die, my life didn't matter. Oh, it's not quite there, but I couldn't resist.
Well, the VIP tour, you might be able to walk around that area, depending on the availability. I don't want to promise anything, but we did take people sometimes around Courthouse Square on the tour, on foot.
I'm on it. I will readjust my schedule to fit what they need. What about you, Don? Have you ever been on the tour? I know you've gone out that way.
I have not. I haven't been to Hollywood. I've been to Universal Studios, the parks, the theme parks the theme park in Florida, in Orlando. Back in the old days, back when they still had the Jaws ride and stuff like that. But I've always wanted to go. I just haven't had the opportunity.
That's it. There you go. We promise that within the next 2 years, we will be there.
Okay.
Fine, you.
Works for me.
You have to hold us accountable? No. That's my way of asking Don to take me. Oh, okay. Anyway.
Normally you buy me dinner first, but anyway.
That's true. Yeah, so now that you're stuck in this awkward conversation, let's jump into this. I normally ask people, why'd you pick this film? I kind of pushed you for it, but what does Creature from the Black Lagoon mean to you? Yeah,
it's an interesting installment in the canon, if I could use that word again. That it for the first time a monster that takes place outside of European folklore. I guess we throw in Egypt. is that as well. Everything is European. You can name all the various countries where all these films take place, and so you're in the Amazon, and that's new. It is a different kind of monster. It's a full bodysuit, which has never been done before. I mean, all the monsters, if you think about it, wear clothes. Wolfman's got slacks and a belt, and Frankenstein has that smart blazer. Dracula is dressed up for a night on the town. But here's a full, complete bodysuit, which I think was new to film goers, I believe, at that point. Certainly, it was a pretty new technology. It's different in the fact that you've got, so we really think of the Universal monsters, so much of it is darkness and night. And most of this film takes place during the day. It's very, very bright. There's very few night scenes. And they could have been played even more scary. If you made that film today, you'd have half the film take place at night, I would think. And they didn't exploit that for whatever reason. Maybe because, it just costs more money to shoot at night. That's always a concern. So you have all these things put together that sort of to make it's not interchangeable. People may think, non-fans might think, well, what is the difference between Dracula and Frankenstein and the Wolfman and the Mummy are all kind of similar, and maybe in the way they are, but this really is different. And the monster doesn't talk, for one thing, which a lot of them, the monsters do in some way. So we're left to kind of fill in the blanks, left based on his actions. He doesn't really have expressions either, because his eyes are always open. He doesn't blink. He has a cool breathing effect. They actually have his gills. On land, he actually does breathe, so you can see his gills which is very cool. But yeah, he doesn't say anything. So we're left to kind of put our own interpretation on his action. So it's a very cool film. I mean, you picked it, but it is it's kind of a forgotten movie of the canon, and it really is. It had its own little trilogy, so it was a huge success at the time.
We're definitely coming back to talk about that. No, you mentioned the suit, and I was utterly amazed at how well the suit holds up today. I mean, it's a little campy. I don't think you could put it out the same today, but it mostly holds up, and it looks really good. I don't know. I was impressed with the close-up of the scales and the gills you were talking about, and even like the shine on the fin that goes down his back. It all looked really good to me still, and I'm utterly impressed with that when a movie's 30 years old.
I agree. There's fearsome claws too. His claws on his hands and feet that are the hand is the whole opening of the film. It's just looking at that hand and those claws. What could this creature be? So yeah, he was sleek but also fearsome with those claws.
What about you, John?
I mean, I was gonna say I think it ages well, and I had my daughter watch the film with me when we were watching it, or when I was watching it, and she threw in the whole things about was everything in black and white before I was born. Because I had her watch several of the classic horror films, but no, she actually enjoyed this one in comparison to some of the others, and it was due to the fact that it was still believable, or there was still a little bit of reality there, because there is no break as far as this is a film that's in color, and you can see a seam, or you can see how there's discoloration or whatever happens, because it's a very well-designed suit. Because as I'm watching it, I'm looking for any of those things that stand out as, oh yeah, you can see a zipper right there, or you can see, you can actually see the guy's arm on the inside. So all those scenes where he's in the water, I'm just marveling at the fact that the actor is swimming in this suit, and some of the most beautiful scenes are where you get to actually see the full body of the gill man. And even when there's that I guess the synchronized swimming scene between he and the female lead, even at that moment, I think for a film gore in 1954, they may have been looking at this and, oh my gosh, is he going to, attack her? What's going to happen? Based off of his previous actions and interactions with characters. But I found myself drawn into seeing exactly how well the design was, how well the shots were, especially when they come back to the end of the film later and he's being hunted. But how believable this is, except for, when you see kind of the close up of his face, and that stands out. But everything else, I mean, it's remarkable that in the 67 years since this movie came out, that it still looks good.
I agree, considering it was even shot for 3D, which we're not watching it that way, and you can tell that some of the shots you may have wondered, why are they shoot that spear gun at us right at the camera? They seem like some of the camera a lot. That is why, to exploit that technology. So the fact that we're even missing that element and it still holds up is to its credit.
I was reading that they actually introduced Gilman to American audiences on Abbott and Costello's comedy show. I think it was the Colgate Comedy Hour or something like that. Okay. And I thought that was pretty fascinating. Like, what a cool way to like get people interested in it, you know? Like, I never really thought about like they clearly didn't have the internet or marketing as we know it today, and I'd never really put much thought like, how did they get people there? Was it just a poster, that kind of thing? And I was like, it was also interesting to me that they went on a comedy show to do it. Because this doesn't play like a horror comedy. So I thought that was kind of fascinating.
That's a very good point. You probably could do a whole episode, if I'll volunteer myself for, how Abbott and Costello saved the monsters and killed them at the same time. It's very interesting. Right. It's amazing. I mean, people have written books about this, how you go from people fainting in the theaters in the 30s to the monsters. Like, that's a generation of like, this is just not, this is full stop, not scary. It is laughable. Right. And so I'm far be it for me to start analyzing that now, but it is interesting. I think Abbott Costello sort of meant something to monster fans by that point. They were it. They were carrying the monster franchise with their various sequels. So I guess that's one way to do it to happen. But it does seem odd to have him be introduced in a completely non-scary way when the film was certainly played for chills. So you're right. It is odd. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, if it had been Abbott and Costello meet the Gill Man, sure, like, I would get that. But, like, this one just doesn't feel... Yes, exactly. But, like, this one just doesn't feel like it would even line up with that. Like, I totally get their connection to it, but I don't know. It's just one of those things that stuck out to me when I was reading. That's strange. And with that said, we have you recorded. You have to come back for that episode. We can use this in a court of law. I just thought you should know. I don't know anything about loss. I don't know if that's true, but
Well, I mean, you've got a witness here. You got two witnesses.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And anybody who's listening is a witness. So
yeah, both of our downloads, they're gonna know too. No.
I got my dad for sure. He's a big fan. He's the one who got me into Universal Monsters. I'm sure he will listen to this.
Oh, that's awesome. My dad actually got me hooked on the Universal Monsters as well, so that's awesome. I wonder if that's how it works. Like you were talking about, like the 20-year-olds with the tattoos. Like, I wonder if that's part of it. It's just that handing down the legacy of these things that meant something to us,
and Don's daughter as well being introduced to them. So there's
absolutely
generation.
Yeah, she has no choice. Like both her parents like horror movies, so there's no choice that she has. I mean, considering that I have to sit through My Little Pony movies and Gravity Falls and Star versus the Forces of Evil, I think she.
I mean, in fairness, Gravity Falls is great. Very nice.
It is. It is.
All right. Where do we want to go, guys? Somebody lead the way.
One thing I was thinking about was the almost like look at this almost as if it was like the monster's on trial. Is the Gill Man a monster or is he a victim? The universe always puts sympathy in the monsters, and maybe that's why people are still fans. They're not all evil, but it was a tough. I'll give it to you. I'll make the case, and you guys maybe decide.
Oh man, so I got you on this one.
So on the monster side, so first of all, in the very opening, he attacks two workers unprovoked. There was you cannot pity. He just goes into the tent. They're not even in the water, and he kills them. There's no negotiation there. So that's pretty. Evil, cruel, brutal. Whatever you want to use. Word you want to use. When he's trapped, he on the boat. He escapes. He could have just split, but instead he decides to go after Dr. Thompson, the guy with the pipe, and I guess burn. We get him getting burned in the attack. He's attacking this guy with intent to kill when he could have just left. There was no reason to go after the guy. He was clear. They didn't know he had escaped. He was gone, and he came back to kill a guy. That seems an intent to harm. Then when they're leaving him alone. The boat. They decided this is too much for us. We need to come back here with soldiers or something. Let's get them out of here. He blocks the boat, which is a very big turn in the film to go. Okay, now he's in charge. Now he has some plans for our hero. goes. That he could have let them go and been at peace for the rest of his life, but maybe, and makes the choice to keep them there. And then eventually at the end, he takes, Kay, Julie Adams, takes her hostage, which is not I'm not sure it's for love. It seems like maybe it's a hostage situation or some kind of bargaining or just an act of cruelty. So that doesn't seem something that is hard to sympathize. Maybe some romance when they're swimming together. That's a fantastic scene. I don't know. We don't see a lot of that of him sort of looking at her or failing to harm her when he has a chance. So I don't know if we're reading too much into that. So that's the monster case. That this is a maybe not mindless. He has some intent there, but is a creature of evil. Victim-wise, I think we think of it as pretty obvious things. He doesn't, until the end, doesn't attack Kay. He swims with her. He sort of wants to touch her, but never does. He's very, very gentle with her, to the point not even touching her at all. He has several opportunities to do so. That speaks well of him. As a victim, he's shot with a spear gun. He gets blasted with the rotenone powder that's supposed to make him groggy. It kills fish. I mean, it might kill him. They don't know. And then eventually he is captured and placed in a little tank on the boat, which is something that is done to him. So those are things all done to him by these evil humans. Where he matches them blow for blow. What do you think? Is he blameless? Is he totally a victim here? Is he going out of his way to do harm to our heroes? I don't know where I stand on that one.
All right, Don, what do you got?
I'm not going to disagree at all. I want to preface with that, because when I was watching it, and sometimes I throw stuff out, as a dad, I throw stuff out just to see if my kid is paying attention. So when they're pursuing him at one point and they trap him, I'm like, oh, the poor fish man. And she turns to me, and she's 7. She turns to me, she's like, Dad, didn't he just kill a bunch of people? He killed people in the tent, and then he killed another guy. He's not innocent. He's not a good guy. And I was like, oh, okay, you are paying attention to the movie here. But I think it's definitely a mix, as far as he was living his life unbothered. And I wrote down on my notes, "Get out of my swamp," to quote the great cinematic masterpiece of Shrek, where it's him living an undisturbed life. They come there. He sees them as a threat, and they don't leave after he makes that the first couple of murders. Whereas maybe in his thinking, it's, oh, well, if I kill these guys, I'm done. This will be a sign to get the hell out of here, to leave me alone. And I think things start getting amped up between both sides. And now it is a thing of, it just becomes a moment where, or at least a series of events that increase as far as the amount of danger, the amount of volatility, to the point where, he does go ahead and take Kay, whatever purpose he was going to, whatever purpose she planned to serve, whether it was, hey, I'm going to take your woman from you, leave, and I'll let her go. Or, I'm going to take this woman away from you, and, if you chase me down, I'll kill you guys for doing that. But yeah, he's definitely in the middle. I'm more sympathetic towards him than I am, especially to Wolfman and Dracula. Not necessarily Frankenstein's monster, but definitely more sympathetic than those two characters.
Well, sure, but Larry was a better person as a wolf. All right, so I'm just saying. But no, I agree with most of that. I think he is just doing his thing, and they show up in his environment. But what I like about this is they have a solid reason not to leave. I'm going to come back to what we were talking about, but just really fast. Like, scientists in this situation would not leave. You have the one who's there for the glory and the money, and you have the one who legitimately wants to study this, right? Well, this is a natural act that the creature is doing. So it makes sense that they don't leave. And so I just wanted to throw bonus points there, because we all know horror movies suck at explaining why people don't leave. So,
and then they try to leave and can't. And they say, okay, we've had enough of this. This is too much for us, and then can't leave. Yeah,
exactly. They have their line where they decide they have to go. And I think that's great. But yeah, I do fall more into, because they don't present him as humanish, I have to side with what would an animal do. If I walked into a lion's area, that's on me, right? If they presented him like Frankenstein in The Bride, where he's trying to learn and trying to get better, then I would hold him accountable for it. But since he's presented as an animal, I have to say I think he's pretty innocent and just doing what he would do.
There are a lot of parallels to history within this, because a lot of the sci-fi movies and even some of the horror movies themselves were all about, I guess they were all reflecting things like the Cold War in them, right? But you could also say that this movie is reflecting colonialism or even imperialism, as far as, why are they shooting at us? Don't they know that we're here to bring them, the Bible, or that we're here to bring them whatever it is, right? We're here to bring them this. Why are they resisting us? And it's that misunderstanding between cultures themselves, or just this lack of knowledge about one or the other, that leads to so many of these issues. And yeah, you're right. As far as him being an animal, even though he has a humanoid shape, it could be argued that he doesn't have that cognitive ability, but the decisions that he makes undercuts that, as far as, going back to the ship or going back to the boat after he's free, and then pursuing them, and then leaving a trap and things like that. Whereas I shouldn't even say typical animal behavior, but the typical behavior that we would see in this type of situation is, I'm free, like you said, I'm free. I'm going to get as far away from you as possible to save myself, as opposed to I'm going to re-engage with you. Because if you've ever had an animal that had an opportunity to get away, they get the hell away. So for me, it seems this moment where he becomes calculated as far as what he's going to do.
Yeah, it's a good point that there's in so many of these films, and most of them take place somewhere in America. I'm thinking something like Them, with the giant ants, or pick a lot of these invasion films. There's a military that's the science is saying no, we can talk to them. The military is saying, oh, if you fire at will, and there's no military here. It's all scientists, and in sort of different ways looking at it. You have, I guess, the Mark role, he's the one saying, well, this is certainly a great find, but it'll be great for me. It'll be the find of the century. It'll be glory for me, and money for me, money for my museum and my institute, and all that sort of thing. But there is no one saying let's just annihilate them. It's all a matter of what his value, the Gilman's value, is as a specimen.
Right.
So it's sort of nice to have that. There's no one just saying kill, kill, kill. It's like they're sort of strategizing, how can we best trap him? If that means killing him first, well, all right, we'll have to trap him alive, but he might get out, and of course he does. So it's very refreshing to see that it's not so clearly, and it's just cliche, the military versus science. Well, there's no soldiers here. That's the problem. They're all civilians, and they have guns, but they're just not equipped for this.
Well, and even the female in the film is actually a scientist. And on top of that, she's not just referred to as a scientist. They show her doing science-y things. I mean, that's amazing in itself. But I like how this subverts so many of those expectations, like having the military person. And I don't know if they were expectations at the time so much as my expectations now watching it, right? But having watched so many of these other Universal monster movies, women are always just kind of there. They're the love interest, or they're the target, but they don't really have as much reason to be there as she does. And I thought that was really strong as well. I don't have any idea where the fuck I was going with this. So there you go.
It's worth bringing up the feminist angle of this movie. From the very beginning, when she's actually driving a speedboat, not just the passenger, she's the one driving Dr. Maya, I guess, to David, because she knows where he is. They're working together. Yeah. She's clearly an assistant of some kind. She's being paid by Mark. She's in the institute. She does give a little spiel about lungfish. She points out the webbing on the hand of the creature when they find just a hand fossil. She clearly knows what she's doing. And beyond even sort of like those are easily identifiable, but thinking of the time period, she is never She's never snapped at. She's never lectured to. She's never intimidated. No one has to say, well, hey, of course you're wrong. You wouldn't understand. She's never had to look away and look down because she was so wrong and so foolish to think the monster could love her or something like that. It is very refreshing to have her just be there. I mean, yes, she has to get saved eventually, and she doesn't ever go diving with them for some strange reason. She swims on her own whenever she goes on the attack or, that sort of thing, or on a research mission. But still, considering the time period, we have to give points for what they didn't do and allow her, she's not married to David at the beginning, and they're not married at the end. There's no proposal. He's holding her at the very last shot, but nothing has changed really. So it is, yes, I think we can give it as far, any crumbs we can get from the 50s. But right, this kind of genre of film, when the woman is just basically a beautiful girl to be saved, who has very few. I mean, Bride of Frankenstein, what does she do at all? She's nothing. She's just a victim. So yes, the points for the film, for the writer, really, for this, to give Kay. So maybe that's why, Dawn, your daughter responded, because the woman is doing something. She's so integral to the very, very end. She's taken captive at the very end. So yeah, that is it does stand out among the monster films where the women don't do anything. Some of the few female monsters like Dracula's daughter.
Oh yeah.
Right. Well, with even with Kay's character, when you mentioned marriage, it made me think about one of their earlier interactions. I think with David, where there's a discussion between her and Dr. Maya about them being married because they're always together, so they may as well. And she says, "Well, I keep telling him that because the whole you can live cheaply, or it was something about combining their income so they could actually get a lot more stuff, or at least have a better life." As opposed to the way that it typically would be pushed, as she's on his ass about getting married, like, oh, how much longer do I have to, to where this is now the research trip that she's tagging along on to make sure that she's there with him and supporting him so that when he comes home, they get married. I'm glad they didn't go that route. And yeah, this is, I'm gonna hesitate to use the term revolutionary, but this is a very, very progressive way of treating women in film. There's a lot more they obviously could have done, but they didn't go those routes that had been typically traveled down. I think, because I always love bringing it back to Mae West, or bringing Mae West into any discussion about women in film. But I think it would have even been powerful if it had been a moment in this film. This would be a 2021 version of it. I'm not ignoring The Shape of Water, where they fall in love, but if this had been the same type of film as it was in 1954, I would see them having Kay kill Gilman in the end.
Interesting.
If as opposed to, it's an ambiguous ending, and of course later there's sequels where he does survive and he's captured. But I could see them having her either kill or capture him, because she's the one who has, she's the only one who survives. She's the final girl.
Huh. Interesting. It's never. We were talking about this. It's not clear what the relationship is. That balletic swimming scene is so fantastic. So it seems that he's mesmerized by her, and yet there's not really. It doesn't. As I think we're all writers, you think of this, you would put this throughout the film. You have these moments on page 30, on page 50, on page 70, and like, okay, see, we're building to something, but eventually take her away. But it doesn't really happen. It seems like it's not clear that he loves her or is fascinated by her, or the other way around. Right. With King Kong, I think it's clear there was some kind of relationship there. Yet she doesn't seem, she's interested in him as a specimen, but not as a love interest. She basically has two already on the boat, kind of fighting over her. So that I wish we knew more. I guess it's up to us to interpret it, like all great art. I guess it's up to us to see it what we want.
That's one of the things I really like about it. I don't want this one spelled out. Like, going back to he's not overly humanized. Like, I think it's great that piece is missing, because it really is an exploration of something we don't understand. So we shouldn't have answers. So I love that.
Right.
A good point.
I want to back up for a second. You were talking about the desire to catch him and, basically make money off of it. Does that play into the sequels?
It absolutely does. It is very so. It's very. They end up making quite a coherent trilogy, but it's a really sad story of what happens to the creature. He does, like so many monsters, does not die. He was shot a million times and just sort of drifts into the depths of the lagoon. But no, somehow they may explain it. I forgive me, I forget. But he is captured and taken to, hey, what do you know, a theme park in Florida, and is a sort of a trained animal, and there are scientists there. There's a woman. It's not Kay Florence, played by Julie Adams. It's somebody different this time, who does sort of pity him, but he is basically sort of put on display, and we see it's hard to tell what the film seems to be saying, that this is a good life. Isn't it better than living in the wild? But we today, whether we don't have cages anymore, and there's no zoo that has cages. Everything is like the natural habitat, because the idea of bars, is so terrifying for us. These animals, we suffer so much. So he's a theme park attraction, and then gets away. It is kind of parallel to Jaws, to the third Jaws film in that regard. And then it gets even more bizarre in the third film, that he is able to survive on land, and is able to he looks more human. He wears clothes. His skin is sort of more human-like. It is very strange. It is not. It's not. What it is not is scary. It looks ridiculous. It looks like sort of a poor version of the old costume. If you ever look at images of it, he looks sort of, it's like not all. It's not all scaly. It's sort of this half version, and then eventually leaves that life as well. Sort of walks into the ocean in the end. And sort of whether that's suicide or that's sort of just trying to go home, but he is basically has been tamed. He has been defeated as a savage creature, and is now like us. Isn't that great? Now he looks like us. He dresses like us. He can talk, but at what cost? Well, what have we done to this creature? He's not happy, and I'm not sure the filmmakers knew that. This being the 50s, where I think of the conquest of the West and how that was portrayed. Just dominance over nature in general. I don't see a lot of sympathy for animals in those days. It is it's a much more coherent story, because I don't know if it was intended that way than a lot of other Universal monsters get, but it is not one. It gets weirder and weirder and just sort of sad.
Right.
Don, have you seen the sequels?
I have not. In fact, I didn't know the sequels existed until I looked at the articles and now I'm very curious.
I was just like I was going to ask. Yeah, I was going to ask how that mirrors, of course, our understanding of history with slaves and bringing African Americans to the U.S. Blah 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 blah.
Dude,
I see a lot of similarities right here. So
Oh no!
Yes.
You don't even have to look that far. You can look at the human zoos of the 19th and early 20th century.
Which is grotesques.
Did I just disturb you, James, by revealing that we had human zoos?
No.
Yeah, they would take
very interesting to me.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure for anybody who's listening. Yes, there were human zoos in Europe, I think Canada, and the United States. And what they did is they brought in people from Africa, from South America, from the islander nations, and put them on display. And it was a very despicable tradition that went on way too long, and it was all about. It was all about putting people on display just like animals, because they were not viewed as human. But yeah, I think with the case of the sequel, as far as the Gill man himself, I apologize to anybody in Florida, but that is such a Florida thing to do. And those of you who've been to Florida know what I'm talking about. Those of you who live in Florida know what I'm talking about, with like the roadside attractions with the gators, or the roadside attractions with tigers. And I'm not saying Florida is the only one, but Florida has a lot of them. So it's completely believable that they would have taken him to Florida as opposed to California. to showcase him as an oddity or as something out there. But yeah, even the concept, because I looked at the synopsis and even from you talking about Jason, the whole idea of humanizing him with the clothing is a way of disarming, but it's also the same thing that was done to indigenous people in this country, where it was, oh, well, you're quote unquote savage, you're uncivilized, or quote unquote uncivilized. The way we civilize you is by putting you in Western style clothing or European style clothing, getting rid of your education. I'm sorry, giving you our education, getting rid of your cultural connections and language, your religion, things like that, to make you more like us. And there was the phrase, and I'm going to misattribute it, so I'm not even going to say who is attributed to the phrase, but there was the statement of kill the Indian to save the man. And I think even with this idea of the Gill Man being a humanoid, it's civilizing him by making him, or separating him from that wild interior of the Amazon, and putting clothing on him, having him walk upright. The whole idea of make him like us, or at least change him from what he used to be. And when you do that, you remove their identity, you basically kill him at that point.
Yeah, there's some heavy themes that I think I like to think the filmmakers knew. It's a little more of a standard film where he he falls in love with one of his trainers. He kills another one of them. It's more of like a King Kong kind of take of it, and we seem like there is sympathy there. But then there's the third film where he is wearing clothes, and it seems like where are we going with this? Why we have to tame him, right, as opposed to making, say, 30 of them invade Los Angeles? That could have been the third film. There's no reason it couldn't have been. You want to heighten and escalate these things. Think of Alien and Aliens. How that?
Yeah, the rest of the Gill Men come looking for him.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen Bob?
Attack of the Gill Man would be amazing. I want to watch that.
And if there's any monster that could be multiples, a lot of the monsters are unique. But really, there could be 30 Gillman. I guess the idea is he's the last of his kind, something along those lines. We never see another one, but there could be. The lagoon is still there. Why can't there be 50 of them? They can't be 50 necessarily Draculas. Maybe a few vampires here and there. I guess he has brides. But in terms of multiple monsters, the creature would totally fit that category.
There's just other creatures down there, and they're like holding each other back, and they're like, "Look at him! He's such a fucking idiot going over there," and they just watch him leave. But no, I really do think that would be an amazing movie. Like, just a whole bunch of them attacking, and like you could do so much with that. That's way more interesting to me than the little tiny bit I know about the sequels I haven't seen.
So the expense of all those rubber suits might have possibly factored into it. These were B movies after all.
No, they just they all share one. It's the same actor. They just film him many times and piece it together. Same technology as the Invisible Man, so it takes a while, but All right, Jason, what else do you got for us?
We've touched on it. There's a little bit of this that we can look at through a 21st century lens. It's not as big as I would have liked, but the sort of environmental message, which goes along with, I think, what you're talking about with imperialism and colonialism. There is this very strange scene, a really useless little moment of Kay, the very few times someone smokes, besides the guy with the pipe, has a cigarette. I don't think she smokes any other scene, as a matter of fact, and drops a cigarette into the water, and we then pan down and see that the Gill Man is sort of watching this and watching the cigarette float down to him, and that it brings to mind the crying Indian ads. It seems like there was no need for this. I mean, the creatures watching them, then you can convey that filmically in many other ways than this non-smoking character smoking a cigarette and then going into the water. But I think it was great. And the larger version of that is, let's poison the lake. Let's. I guess Lucas says it knocks them out. It makes them groggy. It doesn't really kill them. But what we see is they put the rotenone powder in the water and a whole bunch of what look like dead fish surface. Right. And they don't eat them. It's not supposed to be poison. Lucas says we use them for fishing. It's like a lazy way of fishing. They just leave them. There's no thought to, we just killed. We have, possibly the whole food chain is going to collapse now. We're not going to eat you're just going to eat them. You hunt something and eat it. At least there's some purpose behind it. That I found odd. You occasionally see the smoke coming out of the boat. Looks very black and noisy. That isn't really dwelled upon, but maybe we can see that with our eyes now. So there's a little bit of that. This whole idea of these people invading the Gilman's little paradise of the Black Lagoon.
Oh, if you want to talk about somebody angry at that cigarette part, my 7-year-old kid. The two people I love to get reactions on films from are my mother and then my daughter. My mother gives you that feeling when you're watching a horror film, like you are watching it at that movie theater, the horror film that people are going to talk back to the screen. People are going to get interactive with the show. My daughter sits there and just genuinely, candidly reacts to everything that just is not right. So when Kay was, threw the cigarette and she's like, "That is littering. What are you doing?"
That's awesome.
And I'm trying to keep a straight face. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it does make us question, especially in the 2021 lens, the policies and things that we used to think were okay. Well, I mean, I guess there's still some people think it's okay, but collectively we know is wrong and that we shouldn't be doing, as far as, just throwing out cigarette butts or just throwing out random trash. Like, I've caught myself so many times where I've got a wrapper or something and I'm like, I'm just going to put it in my pocket until I find a trash can, because what's the point of me throwing it on the ground? It's this film definitely serves as an historical artifact with the way that people dealt with things, and especially with putting the poison into the lagoon. Of what purpose does that ultimately serve in the end, other than pissing off Gilman, who's now going to probably kill you for poisoning his lagoon?
We need more of that. That would really help the earth out. Animals, we need you to fight back more.
Also, the whole point of it, I never was clear to me. The idea was it will make him groggy. It will knock him out. We've got maybe an hour. And I couldn't quite tell groggy Gilman from fully awake. Because again, his eyes are always open. He moves about the same speed. Like, eventually they capture him, so I guess it worked. But it was never really clear to me is it working? So I expected them to go, it's not working. He's superhuman. It's somehow, but I guess it does work. But he doesn't go to sleep. He doesn't, really seem that groggy at all. He's swimming. So how's it supposed to look?
I'm so glad that they didn't have another mask ready with his eyes like half open.
Or one eye open and one closed.
Oh man. But yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't even thought about how he never appears groggy. He's still pretty much the same. That's really funny to me.
His eyes are always open. That is so when he's in the tank, when he's captured, it's sort of like he's comatose. It's very spooky when he's not moving and his eyes are open like that. It's that's a kind of a cool effect. And of course he is. Yeah, apparently he's fine because he breaks out.
John, what do you got in your notes over there?
No, I've covered most of them, but I think they raised a good point. I can't remember if I know it wasn't Kay, and it might have been David who brought this up, but it was with that whole quest of trying to find what the Gilman was, right, or at least questioning it, and this pursuit that humanity has to answer questions that, you feel like that's going to be your life's mission. So there's this discussion about finding life on other planets, which is a kind of a cool thing that they throw in. Mm-hmm. There's discussion about finding life on other planets, but then there's also this moment where it's like, well, how do we, what about what's here? Like, there's so much stuff we haven't explored here that we haven't figured out. And I think that's a very forward-thinking comment to make in this film, when that's still a struggle that we're having now as far as exploring places in the earth. I mean, I know there are certain billionaires who want to explore other places because they're looking for a place that they can feel safe. But
have they considered exploring the IRS and handing over money? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Why would you ever do that? But as far as exploring, and I don't even want to use exploring, but let's just say, like, looking at places, I mean, everyday people looking for places here on Earth to understand the full functionality, new plant life, new animal life, what it actually can do, or how you can disrupt ecosystems by, I don't know, overfishing or overhunting, or even things like, I didn't know this until recently, like the way in which we have grass contributes to the loss or the erosion of soil. Just like your everyday lawn is nothing compared to the root structure of natural grass or natural wildflowers that actually retain the soil in place a lot more. And when I found that out, I was like, oh my God, let's start planting. Let's see what we can put in these places to make sure that the water stays in the soil, the nutrients stay there. There's plants that the wild animals can eat. And even creating more green belts in a lot of urban areas, and seeing exactly what changes that would make, or how it would help.
That's a good point, Don. I really hadn't thought of that. There's for this film, there's, aside from I wouldn't say poison the lake. It's not poison, but knocking out a lot of the fish. Maybe they're killed. There's really not a lot of hubris. This is good science. The scientists they have different ways of sort of going about it, but the original Dr. Maya is I was a geologist and was just happened to find this hand and then went to the others to get help. It's not. I mean, Frankenstein. That's bad science. Invisible Man, you could argue that is bad science, and all the way through to things like Jurassic Park. No one stops the film and goes, we never should have endeavored to learn these things. What they're doing is perfectly fine, to look at humanity's origins and whether other creatures on Earth with us and are there still. So it's never. There's no fault here. No one's really at fault. How they treat the monster is one thing, but their intentions really are what scientists do. And if there is a creature that they can trap alive and bring back to study, yes, they will do that. We've done it plenty of times. That's no different here. So it really is a good view of science, and no one's being too proud or learning things man was not meant to know, which is such a cliche in these films. So I think to its credit that it looks at science that way and it portrays it accurately.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so many of the others, like you say, they take this moment to just reminisce on, we shouldn't have done this, and that would really kill this. Like, I don't feel like they have a reason to do it in this. Unlike, say, like Frankenstein, there's definitely a reason you shouldn't have done this, But this just feels like any normal exploration to find new creatures and see what's out there and that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's no military haranguing them to do this because we can make a weapon out of it. I mean, yes, Mark is the one saying this will make us a lot of money, but he's a scientist. He didn't come to the Amazon to do that. He was doing actual research and sort of this got handed to him. So I don't really blame him for being maybe too enthusiastic, but his in general, he's a scientist first. So it isn't like this is going to be the new super weapon. So let's exploit him. So yeah, it really is a nice sort of pure, because there's no military in this film. It is just scientists. It's kind of refreshing. And of course the crew of the ship who's there to get killed mostly.
That'll be our twist on our Many Gilman movie. We'll find out the military was behind the attack, but
they created it all along. There's an experiment gone wrong.
Yeah, Jason, what else do you have? Anything major you still want to talk about?
I mean, as we talk about Kay's iconic swimsuit, but what can he say in a podcast? Go look at the pictures, go watch the video, the swimming scene, particularly, even though it's not always her, it's not always Julie Adams. There's a swimmer doubling her at times in that scene, but that is a fantastic moment. Much as we say she's a great scientist and is not sort of exploited in that time, she is. Someone has to go swimming. The men are wearing swimsuits as well in a lot of the film, so she gets to wear hers. So that is
a very different film.
The men are diving a whole lot in that movie. They are in their trunks a whole lot, I gotta say. So something for everyone in that movie.
Very cool. All right, man. Do you have any more stories you'd like to share with us? Because I don't know what you have that you want to talk about, so I don't know how to set you up for it.
The only thing, the Universal Studios connection, which I'm still, although I have not given a tour there in now 13 years, I still have a great affinity for it. I should even say, beyond being there many years, doing a lot of different roles at the park, I met my wife there. She was a fellow tour guide who I met in the break room at the Universal Studios tour. So yeah, we both love Universal and owe it a great deal. It's nice to have a fellow fan that I'm married to. So the sound stages were used for the few interiors. A lot of this film is outside. So if you do go to the various sound stages, I'm not sure which ones at the moment. The guides themselves might know on the tour of which stages, if they're still around. Some of them have been knocked down as NBC has moved in and when more rides have been required as well. But the main part is the parts of the lake. It's now called Falls Lake. It's not where Jaws is. That is a separate water area of the park. But the main lake, if fans will know where the Red Sea used to part, it does not anymore. There used to be at one point, there was a miniature from the 2005 King Kong of the Venture, the SS Venture ship. A big model was there. It was used, U-571 had a submarine there for a while. I'm dating myself of when I was there. But that area was used in various ways to shoot around. I think when they're actually docked. Obviously, when they're moving, there's only so much you can show. And a lot of it, the underwater scenes, right, counterintuitively, were not on a tank. They actually were in Florida because there's like seaweed and stuff down there. And clearly it seems real. But when they are outside and on the boat, a lot of that actually is the Universal Studios backlot, believe it or not. When they're inside the boat or inside the lab, those were just sets built on a soundstage. So some of it was there, despite it being maybe half in Florida. Some of those exteriors you can tell is bigger than a backlot are.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I didn't realize that any of it was actually filmed in Florida. That's fascinating.
Silver Springs, something like that. Some kind of name like that. You can look up. I don't know Florida, being a Texan and Californian and now New Yorker.
Nice. No, the one thing I do want to add is these underwater scenes are just fucking fantastic. Like I know it was a trained professional, but man, they come through so well, and those scenes captured my interest on a level that few things did while we've been exploring the Universal monsters. Like, I was completely invested in those scenes. They were just shot fantastically, and the story that they tell while underwater is so great. And then I was reading like that the Gilman suit had no air tank, obviously. And like, I don't remember his name. Maybe you know.
Rico Browning.
Thank you. He'd be like underwater for like 5 minutes at a time. And I don't know. That's just wow. I can barely stay underwater for 10 seconds. So what do I know? But
that's a good point. There's plenty of fog engulfed graveyards in the Universal Monsters, but nobody goes underwater. It really is a new way of horror filmmaking. They don't make it quite as scary, I think, as it could be. There are some moments where they cut to him and he sort of jumps out, but it's not fully exploited the way it would be today. But that is a new element to make a pun of having a monster in that setting and not just on the heath with tombstones in the background.
Yeah, it's great because it legitimately makes another world that the monster is from, And All right, so Jason, let's bring this back to you, man. Where can people find you online, read more of your articles, and whatever else you got going on? I have a writer's site, Authory, AUTHORY, but really I plug enough of these things on Twitter is where I'm found most often, at Ginsburg, GINSBURG. For theme park fans out there, especially comedy fans, I run a comedy Twitter based on my time as a Universal guide and a fan of theme parks in some way, and a fan of movies and Star Wars, things that are now part of theme parks, called Fake Theme Park, that I've been doing for actually 11 years. So it's all one word, Fake Theme Park, and it is just nothing but jokes every day, literally every single day for 11 years. I've not missed a single day. That's amazing.
One tweet at 6 a.m, that counts as a day, and I'm still doing it. It's sort of a loving parody, loving of everything, of Universal, SeaWorld, Disney, Six Flags, it seems like a lot of the former employees are fans as well. Speaks to their experience, because I look at it from all angles, as a guest, as a guide. I was a character for one summer. My wife was in management for a while. I was in the union, so looking at it from all different angles of it, things to make fun of. So fake theme park on Twitter and Facebook. If you don't like Twitter, I post everything on Facebook page as well. So that's my main social media. And then, as I mentioned the film before, it is being distributed sometime this year, maybe early next year. It was on Amazon Prime Video. Then I got picked up by a national distributor, so it's no longer streaming. The film I talked about with Jeffrey Combs, also Corey Feldman is the voice of the monster in that film. It's a sort of low budget fantasy adventure that I was actually hired to write a bunch of these by an independent producer. It's called the whole world is called Age of Stone and Sky. It's sort of a Neolithic setting. This is the Sorcerer Beast. And Corey Feldman is the voice of the beast. So just look at that. It's on IMDb. Maybe on Wikipedia as well, but it's coming out sometime soon in some format. I don't know. My involvement is over. I wrote the script and got paid, and I wasn't on the set or anything. That's the writer's life. I'm not involved in it. I just get emails about what's happening. So you will see Jeffrey Combs. You will hear Corey Feldman's voice.
That's amazing. All right, cool. Well, I suppose that wraps it up for another week then. So as always, I am James Sabata.
And I'm Don Guillory.
And we will see you back here at thenecronama.com.